So, Skugjarik, Ani Anapchugik, Jacob Butler, Ani Adangakam Autumn. And today we're going to be chopping up this autumn hog, and I'm going to show you how to prepare it to dry. But because the drying takes a few days, you're probably not going to see it dry, but I'll show you how to get to that stage. All right. So first off, I suggest you get something like this, maybe a knife sharpener or whatever you choose. This one's really easy. It has two different types of sharpening blades on here. You're going to need a big knife like this, and then just run it through. However you guys want to sharpen your knives, sharpen them up. This is going to be used to take off all the skin. And then this portion of the squash or the autumn hog is solid meat, and so I use a skinnier knife like this, or even a little paring or steak knife like this one. If you hear any noises, I got people helping me because I don't really know how to do this like tech stuff, but this is all going to be filmed on our very first GoPro, and we're trying to figure it out, so bear with me. But I'm looking at, if you see me keep looking to the side, I'm looking at this video right here, and it's telling me that we're still rolling. So, alright, first thing I like to do is take these two sections apart. Especially on this squash where the side was flat, it's all chopped up and chewed up, so we're going to take off all these little like scratches and stuff. And so I'm going to chop off the part where there's a lot of meat on it. So you just come in, and you got to use a lot of force because like I said, it's solid. So then what you're left with is the top here, and we're going to come back to this. So we'll set it to the side. And then another thing that'll help you is a bucket. So, sweet, there's some seeds in there. So anyways, just get your bucket set to the side, and you can use that to put your excess in. I'll put it up there because there's a hole in the bottom. And then maybe something to put your squash in. So this, I just got this big glass bowl. That's what I'm gonna put my squash in. So now that we have a surface that's flat, we can just come down and start chipping this off. And so basically you just want to run down the side and take out the surface, and this stuff is pretty thick, and so you gotta really watch your fingers, keep your hands away from where your knife angles are going, because it has a tendency to slip. And when it slips, it can cut you if you're not careful. So I'll try to turn it towards the camera so that you can see what I'm doing. Basically, I'm just going over the surface, and I'm trying to take as little of the flesh away as possible and just get the skin. And so because this one is really damaged here, I don't think we're going to be able to go all the way around it, but I'll still try. So I'll work around that first. Another way you can use this squash to eat is actually like just cutting it in half, taking all the seeds out, and then baking it. And you can bake it plain, and there's a mild sweetness to it. Or you can add sugar to your liking, like a brown sugar or butter. And it's really good baked on the low heat for 250 for a couple hours, and you're good to go. One of the traditional ways the people, you see it slipped a little bit, it's because it's very hard there. One of the ways traditionally it would be processed is it would be baked, and then once it was baked, it would be mashed like mashed potatoes, and then you would season it however you'd like with like sugar or honey or a little bit of butter. And once it's mashed, oops, I messed up. Sorry guys, I messed the camera up. So we'll keep it right here on these two, like right in this groove, so that we have the same angle all the time. So if I move it again, I apologize. But now getting back to that dish, then you would basically just blend it all together. And once it's blended all together, you can serve it like that. You can serve it cold or hot, but it's called squash pudding. And it's pretty tasty. I like it. I think it takes a little getting used to, but because it has a texture like baby food. So this is the hard part, because of the way it is. But I'm gonna try to come down the side and then go back over it the other way. But I don't think we're gonna be able to take this whole thing in a perfect what's it called? Fully intact pumpkin or squash. And so with these also, if you've grown them, I hope you took advantage of the baby squash. They're called the hal mama, and the hal mama can be eaten when young, like summer squash. So you can like cook them like the Spanish call it calabacitas. A lot of people out here call it squash and cheese. You can saute them down and have it all break down, and that's a really tasty way to cook them. So this is a little harder to come off because it's curved and the cutting board wants to slide around. So just like I said, be careful with your knife skills. Watch where your hands are, and you should be okay. We've got that off part right there. That's the hard part, the bottom. Do you have a coffee cup or a ceramic cup? So there's another way to sharpen your tools as well. I'm going to show you really quickly while I'm getting this stuff out of the way. So if your knife gets dull and you don't have a sharpening stone or some kind of knife sharpener, this is a cool way to do it. It's kind of, I don't know, I like it. I just took this little like callus or this little scab off. So now, yeah, we did it. Now we have a whole inside full of seeds that need to come out, and so I'll do that next. But say after all that carving, my knife's getting dull. Well, the bottom part of a coffee cup or any kind of ceramic glazed product, the bottom is always unglazed, and so this is a really easy way to sharpen your knife, and it makes them really super sharp. And if you're outside and you're in a pinch, you don't have one of these, you can also use the top of a roll down window, so that beveled part of your window will also sharpen a knife. So if you want to learn some res tips, I'll throw in a little bit more as I go. But so in here, now we have all these seeds and all the fleshy part. So I'm gonna put them right in this coffee cup. because I'm gonna save the bowl for the actual flesh that we're gonna be cutting up. And these seeds are really good to save. Like, always save your seeds, especially with heirloom plants like these. These are traditional varieties. They're usually not commercially available. Native Seed Search does provide seeds to Native Americans free of cost, and non-natives can also take advantage of the seeds in Native Seed Search for a cost, and that cost basically helps the nonprofit provide future grow outs for those seeds and still provide them to the communities that they came from, and ensures that if anything ever happens to them, there's still a place to go. And so that's one place you can get these seeds. But the best measure of protection for me that I believe is that we save seeds from all of our grow outs. And so when you grow at home, save it for yourself. And by saving the seeds that you grow yourself over years of grow outs or successive grow outs, those seeds will grow better for you than anybody else for a number of reasons. One is they acclimate themselves to the way that you grow. And so if you give them a lot of water and they're able to adapt to that, they'll start to be able to handle that more. If you stress them out and don't give them enough water, they'll start to adapt to that too, and then they'll display these traits that are because of the way you grew. And also they get used to the soil, the heat, the temperature that they're growing in, all that stuff, and they become unique to that area. And so I always encourage people to save seeds. It as a gardener, it helps you work a little less hard than you would growing something that was bred to just grow all over the country, because in that way they're more general. So I've been scooping out the seeds, and so there's still seeds in here, and like what I mean is general is they'll generally grow okay over a large area of land, but for us, if you grow for yourself, they'll grow better in that position or that location than anywhere else. And so save your seeds, and if you didn't have the opportunity to buy seeds later, you always have your own. Or if you don't have the opportunity to buy food, you can always grow your own. And this is something, squash is something that's cool, especially like this autumn holiday here is, you know what? I forgot another thing. Can you grab me a spoon? So the reason I'm so worried about getting all this stuff cleaned out is all the stringy insides that are connected to the seeds, those don't taste that good. And so you want to take as much of that off as possible. But I'm trying to keep this all intact so I can show you a cool trick. And so what I'm doing now is I'm just coming in here. I'm going to scoop out as much as I can. And I know my hand isn't towards the camera, but it's a weird angle to do. So what I'm doing is I'm bringing this in and I'm just scooping out all of the fleshy stuff, just like you would with the pumpkin, right? For Halloween. So I'm just gonna run my little spoon through here. I'm gonna turn it, run my spoon through here. And if you don't get it all out, that's all right. It's just, it does help with the flavor. And so I had pictures of all this stuff, and I was gonna do a little PowerPoint, and I still may do a PowerPoint with this video, but I was gonna do a PowerPoint on the drying of the squash, or the processing of the squash that we had done a couple years ago. Because one of the things that I think is really cool about stuff like this is it's meant to be done communally. So like with me right now, I'm gonna probably get tired of doing this, and one squash is all right and it's easy to do, but if we're doing like a whole field or a whole harvest, this would get pretty tedious pretty quickly, and so I'd probably get burned out on it. So having the help is great, but it also makes for a fun time. That's the time that people socialize, and we come together and we share stories, make jokes, and the time really goes by really fast. And so if you're gonna do this, I would suggest you do it with a group or a family, because it makes it a lot more fun. So with this is a skinnier knife. Skinnier knives are better for this part. I don't know what they're called. Like, yeah, maybe a fillet knife. Fillet knives, yeah, I guess this is a fillet knife. We can use a small paring knife too or something like that, but so I like to hold it a little bit further up, kind of like this. Alright, it's kind of like this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start here and dig into it. And so I'll stop and I'll show you. Like, it's barely in there, right? And so you don't want these really thick cuts because those aren't going to dry as fast and you might get mold before it dries. But basically all I'm going to do is start slicing this, and the trick is to try to keep it intact. You don't have to, but it's like bragging rights, right? So I might even throw it in this bowl because it's going to want to crack. Alright, so I threw it in the bowl. And then you just come around it and keep twisting, and then you hold on to this. Hold on to the squash part that you've already cut, because that's what's going to keep it in place and keep it from cracking. Yeah, it should. It's not going to do a very good job of it, but it'll help. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to go to the Smithsonian collection for the National Museum of American Indian. And while I was there, I got to look at all the collections for the autumn. And that is in the, so that's in the National Archives in Sweetland, Maryland. And while I was there, I found a squash rope. It looked like a bundle of rope that had been tied together. And when I picked it up, it was actually squash that had been stripped just like this and then dried to a point where it was about the texture of jerky, and then it was rolled up in a rope, like in a bundle of rope, how that would be rolled up, and it was tied with itself. Well, see, so like this is what you're gonna do. You're gonna go like that, and if you have a little bit of those hairs, like I said, it's alright. Or you can be really meticulous and come in here and just thin this out, taking off the hairy sections. And when you're done, just put it back in your bowl. Oh, sorry, my back is kind of feeling it. So I'm gonna chop the bottom off so that this can stay a little bit more stable. Again, be careful with your knife skills, but even that can be laid out to dry. All right. Oh man. And if you have it at an angle, I have my knife at an angle like that, see? It helps to cut into the squash a little easier. We're gonna try this again without breaking it. And like I said, it doesn't matter if you break it, it's just it's more to brag. Act like you have skills, but you don't need to do it. So I apologize if I'm going out of frame. I'm just working my way around. And in a second, I'll pull it back up and I'll show you what it looks like. Now this thin part is where the breaks keep occurring. So when I get to the thin part, I make it just a little thicker so that it stays together. And when your hand's in there and you're holding the squash, just watch out where the knife is going, because you might stab yourself. So I'm really worried about that because I've seen people stab themselves, and if you guys are watching a video that I made, I don't want you to say, well, the Autumn guy from Salt River just told me to do this and he got me cut. And this cutting board keeps moving over. So I'm going to keep adjusting here and there. But if you're patient, and you work fairly calmly, you can pretty much cut this whole squash into one long string. Let me try to scoot to the side so maybe you guys can see it better. Oh. All right. Every time I cut, I'm just working myself along the first cut. So I'm just following the first cut, trying to stay the same thickness. And this one I'm gonna have to cut off right here because it's thin over here on the bottom. But now that I have, I'll scoot this to the side really quickly and I'll show you. So this is all one long string. And then we'll put this in here and I'll save it for later to show you what we're gonna do next. But let me get through all this. So I'll try to go to the right, see if it's a little easier. Nope. It's making it cut really thick. So again, like if you cut a little thicker, it's all right. It's just, it dries faster and easier if it's a little thinner. But this squash here was fairly thin on its thickness, and so the cuts aren't as important. The thickness of my cuts aren't as important because the flesh thickness is pretty thin. So I'm going to pick this up and I'm going to do this on table. So you probably want to do it on a surface that doesn't want to move around, because it can get you hurt. Because it can slip and I can slice myself open. So just gonna keep going. And see, once it gets fairly large, it wants to start falling in on itself. So you just gotta keep holding it. I think when you have people around too, you try harder so you can brag about it. And so maybe if other people were doing this with me, we'd all be trying to outdo each other. And so it makes your skills a little bit, I guess, more sharpened. And see, like this one just broke. So again, I have this whole string of squash and then I'm going to set to the side. And then you can do the same thing with this one, even though it's pretty flat, right? So I'm going to turn this into a spiral little cut. Oh, before I do, just take all this off. Okay. So I'm glad I have an awesome little son here next to me, because he's going to be able to clean up all my mess when I'm done. Shaking his head no. And I have sharper knives, but I don't have skinnier knives, and so this blade thickness is very thin, and that's very helpful when you're doing this kind of work. So because I do have a sharper knife, it might cut the squash a little easier, but it doesn't want to go through. It's more good for like slicing. It's not good for the method that we're doing, is trying to get it to kind of slide through the squash while it's still intact. And even right here, the squash is starting to fall apart. So these can be laid out on their own and dried this way. And then even with these, like this is a little thicker, I can slice it right in half. And that'll be easier to dry. Alright, now we're gonna do the neck. Okay. So the first thing I would do is just come over and cut this part off. And for us, when we pick our squash, the best indicator for us when it's fully ripe and it's not going to break down, or it's not breaking down yet, but our seeds are developed. And for us, our seeds are a big reason why we grow, is we have a seed bank here in Salt River. And so for us, we want to make sure that we're getting the seeds out of these plants, and so, or these fruits. And so this is the stem that comes off of the squash that's connected to the squash vine. So when this gets really woody and corky like this, right when it starts to dry into something like this, then we pick it. You can probably pick it a little earlier, but we pick it at this point because we know that all the seeds are developed. And the integrity of the squash flesh is still there. And so we're still good with that. And so I'm probably going to get yelled at a little bit if some of the older folks see me do this, because I cut off some pretty big chunks. But as you do it more, you'll get better and better. And so some people ask, like, well, what did they use before they had knives? Well, we always had these lithics that were like basically chips of stone, and those would be used in a similar fashion. It would probably be a little harder to do and have it be as refined. But to be honest, I haven't focused a lot on doing it that way, because a friend of mine likes to say, well, if we had it back then, we probably would have used it. And so we have this stuff today, and I'm using it. And we also have like dehydrators and things like that. But I think finding your own balance, what you're comfortable with introducing into your process, and still retaining these traditions is important. And to find that balance and where you're comfortable with is I think something that's up to everybody to do on their own. And so for me, using a knife is awesome. Using the dehydrator, if I didn't have the time, is another option. But for this purpose, I'm going to show you how to do it without anything but a knife and a spoon and a GoPro and a couple people helping me. So I guess, yeah, you're going to need a few things. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just scooping out all this stuff that was in the other side of the pumpkin, or the squash. So now we're going to cut this portion up, and this is solid. And so it you should be taking a little bit off at a time, and it'll give you these smaller little strings. But it's basically the same way. So I'm going to sharpen this knife again, and then I'll show you. Okay. So what I do is, because it's solid, you can come in and you can take off a little bit off of the edge. You don't have to go all the way into it, because we're just going to keep going around in circles. That didn't work too well. And this way I'm kind of like just peeling it like I would do an apple, I guess. But again, it's just a little harder to do than that bigger portion. So what you end up with is stuff like this. I'm gonna try a different knife just to show you. This is a little thicker knife. It's a lot sharper, but it doesn't seem to cut as easily through this. Well, maybe it does. So I'm putting my thumb in front of it and I'm just dragging it towards myself, but it gives you more control. You just have to be really cautious. There's another one. See these little strips? So I'll just put all these strips in here. And so now we're just coring down this thing. And if you get some stuff like that, you can dry these or you can use them like faster. So you can save the larger stuff for drying, and then even this you can dice up. But now I showed you how to do the strips, the curls or the curly cues or whatever you want to call them. I'll show you a different way that was taught to me that works similarly, and it's a little easier for people to do other than like just going around. But basically, oh, there's some stuff left over on here. You don't want any of this stuff, so I don't know if you can pick it up very well, but there's a little bit of this white, harder portion here, and that's a part of the inner skin, and so that's sour and or bitter, and so you don't want that. But another way you can do it is very easy, and you just slice it into little strips. And so if you look, it's, what is that, like about a 1/4 inch thick. So I'm gonna cut them into these 1/4 inch thicknesses. Oh, maybe a 1/2 inch, I guess. You think it's a 1/2 inch? Yeah, anywhere from about a 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch. I'm just gonna chop this bottom off so it doesn't move around. You gotta make sure you stick your tongue out when you're doing it, because it gives you more control and focus. Now I notice I do that a lot. Okay. Now that we have these strips, you can do them a few at a time, and it works pretty good. So now I'm just going to cut them into these little, like almost like French fry sizes. Touch the camera, see if it goes on. So So we're using a GoPro. It's the first time I ever did, and oh, it's overheating and stuff like that. So we're trying to figure out how to work it. But so hopefully all this stuff's coming out for y'all. But basically, you have these little fries, right? Or these little strips, and with these ones, you can lay them out on like a piece of cloth stretched over a board. An elder that works with me, she just placed these. She placed these on a sheet. Hey, Mama. Just leave it for now, and then we'll do it later. So she placed. She placed these on a sheet, and like just a baking sheet, and then she put it out in the sun and let them dry, and then she would go out there like every few hours and then just turn them, and so you just turn them over. And so I'm gonna try to get a picture for you guys to show you what that looks like. And so if you have some that are cut a little thicker, just cut them right in half, and so that way it helps with the drying process. And then when these are yeah, like the consistency of jerky, then you can wrap them and you can leave them out there so they dry entirely. Like they have to be totally dry before you store them. But when they're like the consistency of jerky, you can bundle them together a little bit more, and they're able to be worked so they can be stored in a different way. So here's one way of processing your squash out before it gets dry. And then, could you get me a baking sheet that we might have? Oops, sorry about that, guys. Okay, don't mind my baking sheet, it's not too dirty, I don't think. But basically, you just put them out just like this. Line them all out. You want to try to give them a little bit of separation so that they're not touching each other though. So I'm going to get these out. So if you have to use more than one baking sheet, then go for it. I'm only going to do this one here just to show you what it looks like. But you want to give them a little bit of breathing room so that it seems like when they touch, they don't dry too well, and then like that's where all the bad stuff starts to happen with like mold growth and things like that. And so you just want to give them their own attention, I guess. And then usually this is done around the summertime, and so it's definitely hot enough to dry these guys out, and you're good to go. And then just leave them out there, let them dry like that. But there's another way. Can you bring me my drying rack, my drying stick? There's another way that you can do it, and we thought we were smart. Yeah, that one right there. We thought we were pretty smart because, well, you got to worry about bugs, right? Like, so what happens to the flies and all that other stuff? And we're always told the traditional way is just to let them sit out there and hang. And so, because we're worried about flies, we wrapped it in muslin. Like we put all the squash on a stick, and then we wrapped it in like a cloth, a breathable cloth, but it was still cloth. And when we opened up that cloth after about 4 days of sitting out there, So when we open up that cloth, hold on.
Sorry.
All right, everybody, you guys gotta stop moving. I know. All right. So we got like 100 different things going on. So I apologize because our house makes a bunch of noises when we move around. But yeah. So what was I gonna say? Oh, so we put cloth on the squash so that the flies didn't get in there or whatever, right? And so they didn't get dust on them. And then what ended up happening is when we opened up the cloth, the whole thing was just a big pile of mold. Like the whole thing was a solid like lump of mold, and then all the squash was black. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to suffocate your squash when you're dehydrating. If you really want to protect them, then maybe you can put like a screen mesh over this. So if you wanted to protect these while they're out there drying, put a piece of screen over there that will keep some of the stuff from landing on it. But something that's very breathable, that sun's still going to travel through, and that the moisture's still going to escape from. So that might help. Or you can put it within a little box frame that's framed out with screen material, because you don't want anything too close to it. That's what really causes that moisture to stay within the squash and create like mold. But with these, so now I'm gonna ask like my kids to help me out. Jake, come help me. Grace, come help me. Hurry.
Yeah.
All right, hold this stick. Go ahead. If you want, you can kneel down or sit down. So if you want, you can put it right there and then just hold it. And then you two sit down real quick. And then hold it on your shoulder so that it's about even. Scoot up. Scoot closer to the camera, Jake. There you go. That way it stays about even. All right, now hold it. You got to hold it. Okay, you got it? Hold on to it. You're okay. All right, sweet. So then with this stuff, oops, I just dropped one. And now, all right, don't move, guys. Don't move, guys. All right, don't move because they're gonna fall, okay? So with this one, and then what's cool is you can either feed it all from one end, or you can just kind of like bend the squash over it. But again, you want to give them, oh dang, there's a little bug that flew in. You want to give them their space. So let's see. What else is on here? Well, this one is pretty big. So what we're going to do with this one is we're going to come in through this side. Watch out real quick, Gracie.
Yeah.
All right, now hold the stick. And we're going to hang it up right here. Oh, it's going to get heavy, guys. So you got it? You tough?
Not that heavy.
All right. All right, let's see how strong y'all are, because it's going to get a little heavier. Okay, here you go.
Ow.
Hold on, buddy.
A splinter. Wait, how does it not get like wood stuff on it?
So this might get a little bit of wood stuff on it, but it does. And so like this stick is an older stick. There's not really a chance of it like splintering out or anything, but the dry sticks actually absorb some of the moisture itself. So then you want to kind of come in here every once in a while and move them around, and that way they're not just sitting in the same places, but always kind of keep them separated. And then after, I would say after 2 days, maybe even a day, depending on the time of the month that you do it. If it's like in mid-June, anytime in July, in about a day they'll be really pliable and you'll be able to like kind of manipulate them more. And then about a 2 or 3 day, or 3 or 4 days later, these are going to be super dry. Well, basically all you do after this is, now we have it, right? And then we just hang it between two branches and